The weight of eternity. Supreme Commander Thaxis of the HFY Stellar Collective stood motionless before the massive observation dome, his ancient eyes fixed on the blue-green world that had appeared in their long-range scanners merely 8 decades ago. At 17,000 years old, Thaxis was considered middle-aged among his kind. The HFY had conquered aging millennia ago, their bodies suspended in perpetual prime, their cellular structure resistant to decay and disease. Another life-bearing world, remarked Science Director Ilara, her voice carrying the unmistakable weariness of one who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. At 22,000 years old, she was among the oldest aboard the exploration vessel Eternal Horizon. This one has achieved nuclear capabilities, Thaxis noted, studying the data streaming across the holographic display that hovered before him. And they've begun rudimentary space exploration. The 27th such species we've encountered, Ilara replied with scholarly detachment. They'll be gone in a few millennia. Like all the others, insufficient resources, environmental collapse, or self-destruction. The pattern never varies. As the Eternal Horizon settled into orbit around the outer edge of the solar system, something unusual became apparent. The species that called themselves humans exhibited an extraordinary rate of technological advancement. Their civilization had progressed from basic agriculture to space exploration in less than 10,000 years, a pace unprecedented in HFY records. Their lifespans are remarkably brief, Communications Officer Varen observed with fascination. At just 3,000 years, Varen was practically a child by HFY standards. Barely a century at their maximum. Thaxis' expression remained unchanged, but his voice carried a hint of incredulity. How can any species achieve meaningful progress when individuals exist for such a limited time? For 6 months, the HFY observed humanity from their hidden position beyond Pluto. Their ship's advanced cloaking technology rendered them invisible to Earth's detection systems. They monitored communications, studied cultural transmissions, and compiled extensive data on human society. Contrary to protocol, which dictated a minimum observation period of at least 30 years before any contact decision, Thaxis called a council meeting after just half a year. Their rate of advancement is concerning, he stated simply. In the time we've been watching, they've developed 23 major technological innovations. At this pace, they'll achieve interstellar capability within a century. Science Director Ilara's eyes narrowed. That can't be right. Species with such brief lifespans shouldn't be capable of such progress. There must be a miscalculation. The data is accurate, Varen insisted. They appear to thrive under the pressure of their mortality. It drives them forward at an extraordinary rate. After much deliberation, a full month, which was considered hasty by HFY standards, the Council voted unanimously for first contact. As the self-appointed guardians of galactic stability, the HFY had a duty to establish diplomatic relations with any species approaching interstellar capability. The day humanity learned they were not alone changed Earth forever. The HFY vessel moved into Earth orbit and decloaked over the United Nations headquarters in New York. Thaxis addressed the world's leaders with the measured calm of a being who had witnessed the birth and death of stars. "We come in peace," he announced, using humans' own cliched greeting, which HFY linguists had extracted from their entertainment transmissions. "We are the HFY, and we have watched your civilization with great interest." The initial shock gave way to cautious diplomacy. A special council was formed, the Human HFY Relations Committee, to manage the unprecedented relationship. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, was appointed as humanity's scientific liaison. From the beginning, the fundamental difference between the species became apparent. Time, where humans rushed to establish treaties, exchange knowledge, and integrate HFY technology, the visitors operated at a glacial pace. What seemed an urgent matter to humans was approached by the HFY with the deliberation of those who had millennia to consider their options. "You must understand," Faxis explained to a visibly frustrated UN Security Council 3 months after first contact. We have existed for over 40,000 years as a civilization. We have learned that hasty decisions lead to catastrophic outcomes. With respect, Commander, replied UN Secretary-General Okafor, humanity doesn't have the luxury of centuries-long deliberations. Climate change threatens our coastal cities. Resource scarcity has brought us to the brink of conflict. Your environmental technology could save millions of lives if implemented now. We will share our technology, Faxis assured him. Once we have properly assessed all potential consequences, perhaps in a decade or two. As the diplomatic impasse continued, Dr. Rodriguez made a breakthrough in her research. Granted limited access to HFY biological data as a gesture of goodwill, she discovered something extraordinary about their neural structure. Their brains are fundamentally different from ours, she explained to the scientific committee. Their neural pathways become increasingly fixed with age. The oldest HFY, those over 15,000 years, show almost no neuroplasticity. Meaning what exactly? Asked Dr. James Chen, her research partner. Meaning they literally cannot change their minds, Maya replied. Their immortality comes at a cost. The older they get, the less capable they are of adapting to new ideas or circumstances. Their thinking becomes calcified. This discovery coincided with an unexpected crisis. Long-range HFY sensors detected an interstellar anomaly, a quantum filament storm moving through space directly toward the solar system. Such phenomena were rare but well documented in HFY records. The filament storm would pass through Earth's orbit in approximately 8 months, potentially causing catastrophic damage to both the planet's infrastructure and the HFY vessel. We must coordinate evacuation plans, Secretary-General Okafor urged after being briefed on the threat. Your ship can transport people to safety, can't it? Faxis and the HFY Council deliberated for 2 weeks before responding. Precious time lost. The quantum filament storm poses a significant threat, Faxis finally announced. However, evacuation is unnecessary. We have encountered such phenomena before. Our shields can be modified to protect both our vessel and your planet. The modification process will take approximately 5 years to perfect. 5 years. Dr. Rodriguez interjected, speaking directly to Faxis during an emergency session. The storm will hit us in less than 8 months. For the first time, a flicker of distress crossed Faxis's ageless face. That cannot be correct. Our calculations indicate. Your calculations are based on standard filament propagation. Maya finished for him. But this storm is accelerating as it interacts with the solar wind. The timeline has compressed. The HFY Council retreated once more into deliberation. As they conferred in their characteristic silence, Maya approached Ilara, the science director, with whom she had established a tentative rapport. Your people can't solve this problem quickly enough, can they? Maya asked quietly. Ilara's ancient eyes met hers. We have never needed to. For millennia, we have had the luxury of time. But we don't have that luxury now, Maya pressed. Let us help. Human engineers working alongside your technicians, we specialize in rapid solutions. Imperfect solutions, Ilara corrected. Imperfect solutions that work, Maya countered. Isn't that better than a perfect solution that comes too late? For several long moments, Ilara said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Perhaps there is wisdom in your brevity that we have forgotten in our eternity." The next day, against Faxis' objections, Ilara authorized a joint human HFY engineering team to address the quantum filament threat. For the first time in millennia, the Immortals found themselves working at a pace dictated by urgency rather than perfection. The cultural clash was immediate and profound. Human engineers proposed makeshift solutions that horrified their HFY counterparts. The Immortals insisted on meticulous calculations that the humans deemed unnecessarily time-consuming. But as the quantum filament storm continued its approach, something remarkable began to happen. Adaptation. The youngest HFY engineers, those under 5,000 years old, began to embrace the humans' methodology. They found ways to merge HFY precision with human improvisation. The older immortals remained resistant, their neural pathways too fixed to accommodate new approaches. 2 months into the crisis, with the filament storm accelerating faster than predicted, the joint team presented their solution: a network of quantum resonance satellites that would disperse the storm's energy before it reached Earth's orbit. The concept was human. The technology was HFY. The implementation would require both. "This is untested," Thaxis objected during the presentation. "The risk of failure is less than the certainty of disaster if we do nothing," Maya interrupted. "Commander, sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good enough." As Thaxis struggled to process this concept, Ilara stepped forward. "I support this plan," she announced, an unprecedented break from the consensus-based HFY decision-making process. "We must adapt or face consequences neither of our species can afford." The schism that followed divided the HFY along age lines. The younger immortals sided with Ilara, while the elders backed Thaxis. For a civilization that had operated on consensus for thousands of years, this disagreement was unprecedented and potentially transformative. In the end, as the filament storm loomed just 3 months from Earth, necessity prevailed. The quantum resonance satellite project began, with Ilara leading the HFY contingent and Dr. Rodriguez coordinating the human teams. The race against time had begun, and with it, perhaps the first cracks in the HFY's eternal certainty. The wisdom of mortality. The quantum resonance satellites took shape with remarkable speed. Human manufacturing facilities operated around the clock, retooled to produce components designed by the joint engineering team. The HFY contributed their advanced materials and quantum manipulation technology, while humans provided the innovative deployment solutions and adaptive programming. Thaxis watched the proceedings with growing unease. In his 17 millennia of existence, he had never witnessed such hasty implementation of untested technology. The older HFY remained largely sequestered aboard the Eternal Horizon, their neural pathways too rigid to adapt to the frantic pace of the emergency response. "They're afraid," Communications Officer Varen observed one day, watching a group of senior HFY engineers retreat from a planning session with their human counterparts. At 3,000 years old, Varen found himself increasingly drawn to the humans' methodology. "Not afraid," corrected Ilara, who had become the de facto leader of the progressive HFY faction. "Unable. Their neural architecture cannot process rapid adaptation. It's not a choice, it's a biological limitation." 3 weeks before the projected arrival of the quantum filament storm, the first series of resonance satellites were ready for deployment. The joint team had constructed 37 devices, each containing a quantum core that would generate a dispersal field when activated in sequence. "We need to test the network," insisted Dr. Chen, Maya's colleague in the Human Science Division. "We can't deploy without verification." "There is no time for testing," countered Thaxis, who had reluctantly joined the operational meetings. "Our models indicate a 78.3% chance of success based on theoretical calculations." Maya Rodriguez, who had been studying the simulation on her tablet, looked up. "What if we don't need to test the entire network? What if we test just one satellite against a controlled quantum fluctuation?" Ilara's eyes widened slightly. The HFY equivalent of astonishment. Generate an artificial filament. The energy requirements would be enormous. "Not if we use your ship's propulsion system to create a controlled quantum wake," Maya replied. "It would be small, but enough to test the dispersal mechanics." Varen nodded enthusiastically. It could work. The auxiliary drive generates a quantum field as a byproduct. We could channel that energy. Thaxis' face remained impassive, but his voice carried a note of reluctance. "Such a procedure is not in our operational protocols." "With respect, Commander," Maya said firmly, "neither is facing extinction from a quantum filament storm. We need to adapt." The test was authorized the following day, not by HFY consensus, but by a majority vote that included both species. For the first time in their 40,000-year civilization, the HFY had embraced a democratic process. The test was a qualified success. The resonance satellite managed to disperse 63% of the artificial quantum filament, below the theoretical projection, but enough to prove the concept viable. Modifications were made, the remaining satellites were completed, and deployment began 1 week before the storm's arrival. The deployment itself presented another challenge. The satellites needed precise positioning in a spherical grid around Earth, but the HFY vessel's shuttle capacity was limited. At our current rate, deployment will take 17 days, an HFY logistics officer reported. The storm will arrive in 6. The human solution was characteristically unorthodox. "We'll use everything we've got," announced General Lakshmi Rao of the International Space Command. "Rockets, shuttles, experimental craft. Hell, we'll strap boosters to weather balloons if we have to. If it can reach orbit, we're using it." The global mobilization that followed was unprecedented in human history. Nations that had been adversaries for decades pooled resources. Private space companies offered their launch vehicles. Research institutions converted experimental craft for deployment duty. Even civilian pilots volunteered to fly modified high-altitude planes carrying satellites to the upper atmosphere, where smaller boosters would complete the journey to orbit. Many of the younger HFY joined the deployment teams, working alongside humans in a chaotic but effective operation that violated every procedural norm their society had established over millennia. The older Immortals watched with a mixture of horror and fascination as centuries of protocols were discarded in favor of improvisation. 4 days before the storm's arrival, the last satellite was positioned. The network was complete, an invisible sphere of quantum technology surrounding Earth, ready to disperse the approaching threat. "Now we wait," Faxes said during the final briefing. Maya shook her head. "No, now we prepare backup plans. If the network fails, we need contingencies. There's no time to develop alternatives." Faxes objected. "There's always time to think differently," Maya countered. "Your people have existed for 40,000 years by perfecting single solutions. We've survived for 300,000 years by always having a Plan B. Plan B, as it turned out, involved using Earth's own magnetic field as an amplifier for the quantum resonance effect. Human scientists had been working on the concept since the crisis began, developing a network of ground-based stations that could, in theory, strengthen the satellite array's dispersal capability. When the quantum filament storm finally reached the outer edge of the solar system, it had grown even more powerful than predicted. The sensors on the eternal horizon registered energy levels 37% higher than their models had projected. "The satellite network will be insufficient," Faxes announced gravely during the emergency briefing. "We should prepare for significant damage to both our vessel and your planet." Ilara studied the data with a frown. "The resonance effect might still work if we can amplify it somehow." "Plan B," Maya said simply, and activated a communication link to Earth's surface. "Dr. Kamala, are the ground stations ready?" "Online and awaiting your signal," came the reply from the lead engineer at the primary magnetic amplification facility in Iceland. The storm hit with terrifying force. The quantum filaments, microscopic tears in the fabric of space-time, began interacting with the outer planets, causing spectacular auroras across the solar system. As the disturbance approached Earth's orbit, the satellite network activated automatically. The initial dispersal was promising. The leading edge of the storm began to fracture as it encountered the resonance field. But as the main body of the phenomenon arrived, the satellites began to fail under the strain. "The dispersal rate is dropping below effective levels," reported an HFY technician, 43% and falling. "Activate the ground stations," Maya ordered. Across Earth, 17 magnetic amplification facilities powered up simultaneously, sending carefully calibrated pulses through the planet's own magnetic field. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The resonance field strengthened, catching the quantum filaments in an expanding web of disruptive energy. Dispersal rate at 67%, reported the technician. 72, 78. The storm passed through Earth's orbit over the next 6 hours, gradually diminishing as the combined technology of both species tore it apart. When the last filaments dissipated, the damage was minimal. Some electromagnetic disruption, spectacular auroras visible worldwide, but no catastrophic effects. In the aftermath, both species found themselves changed. The Azurai, particularly the younger ones, had experienced something they had not known for millennia: adaptation under pressure. The humans had gained access to quantum technology that might have taken them centuries to develop on their own. But the most profound change was philosophical. "We have been alive for so long that we forgot what it means to live," Ilara said during the formal debriefing a week after the crisis. "Our immortality became our prison, neural pathways fixed in eternal patterns, unable to conceive of new possibilities." "That's why you've never encountered a species like us before," Maya suggested. "Most civilizations probably develop like yours, slowly, methodically, with plenty of time. But Earth has always been unstable. We evolved under pressure, constantly adapting to new threats." Faxis, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the crisis passed, finally spoke. "Perhaps there is value in your brevity that we could not see. Your mortality forces you to act, to innovate, to seek new solutions before your time ends." The aftermath of the quantum filament crisis transformed both species' approach to their relationship. The Azurai established their first permanent embassy on Earth, not a mere diplomatic outpost, but a research and cultural exchange center led by Ilara and the younger Immortals who had worked most closely with humans during the crisis. The older Azurai, including Faxis, returned to their home systems, but not before establishing protocols for ongoing cooperation. The Eternal Horizon departed Earth orbit 6 months after the crisis, leaving behind a smaller vessel and a contingent of younger Azurai who had chosen to remain. Most significantly, the Azurai began to reconsider their own immortality. The neural calcification that accompanied their endless existence had preserved their civilization but stunted their growth. Research into controlled neural renewal, a concept that would have been unthinkable before contact with humanity, began in secret Azurai laboratories. For humanity, the benefits were immediate and profound. Azurai environmental technology helped reverse climate damage. Medical advances extended human lifespans, not to immortality, but to healthier, more productive years. The quantum technology that had saved Earth from the filament storm found new applications in energy production and space exploration. 5 years after first contact, as Earth launched its first quantum drive vessel, a joint human Azurai project, Maya Rodriguez stood beside Ilara at the observation deck of the new International Space Station. "Do you ever regret it?" Maya asked, watching the sleek ship prepare for its maiden voyage to Jupiter. "Helping us advance so quickly?" Ilara considered the question with the thoughtfulness of one who had lived for millennia. "We thought your brief lives made you lesser," she said finally. "We were wrong. Your mortality is your strength. You see possibilities we cannot because you must. You take risks we would never consider because you have no choice." The quantum ship's engines flared to life, a brilliant blue glow against the darkness of space. "Your species has taught mine a truth we have forgotten in our eternity," Ilara continued. "That life's value lies not in its duration, but in its adaptation. Not in perfect certainty, but in the courage to embrace imperfection." As the ship accelerated toward the outer planets, a new chapter in galactic history had begun. One written not by immortal beings who had conquered death, but by the collaborative spirit of 2 species who had learned from each other's strengths and weaknesses. The Azurai had discovered that immortality without growth was merely existence, not life, and humanity had found that their greatest strength lay not in living forever, but in making the most of the time they had. Together, they stepped into the future, finite and infinite, side by side.